Community engagement to Pacoima Beautiful is really a partnership. We understand that residents and community members in Pacoima know what's best for them. They know what they need in their community. They know what they need more access or resources to, and community engagement is just including them as part of that conversation. It's including them in the conversation of what the design of the wash would look like, some of the challenges that they see here already and how we can possibly address them with the design of the wash. Community engagement is really about ensuring that residents and the people that are going to be most impacted by this project have first say in what they want it to look like. We understand and we recognize that the tribal members were the first peoples here in this particular area of Los Angeles, and we thought it was absolutely necessary to include their voice in the vision and the design of the wash.
You know, here we're on Tongva indigenous people land, so you know we can't start talking about the park just from like 1970 or even 100 years ago. You know, the history of the land here is connected to the indigenous people here, right? Many families here are indigenous people from Mexico. They're, you know, from Chiapas, Guerrero, Oaxaca, you know, central Mexico. But the folks, the stewards of the land that have been here for centuries are the Tongva people. So the elements of information to be included here must include some engagement from the beginning with the Tongva people. So we hope we as allies, you know, we're going to ensure that we always bring that up and make that connection. The first step or the mid-level step of consulting gets community ideas for projects that you may not have been thinking about or may not have been considering, as far as like, you know, things that are important in the community, like, you know, like cultural kind of historical markers, or like even things such as trees, right? Like there's certain trees that the families are like, hey, this tree we never wanted to go.
We want to make sure that whenever we choose the trees, the amenities, the walkways, any aspect of that community is here to tell us, hey, that might actually not go very well because we have X, you know, Y issues here. Or, you know, we actually want to see more amenities for children because there's a lot of, you know, here at Paxton Park, we have the baseball fields, but maybe they don't have any play areas for kids. And so whenever we reach out to community members, we ask for their opinion, we ask for their feedback, it's really asking for their expertise. As you know, some residents have lived here decades, 20, 30, 40 years. And so they know what happens every season here, what happens during baseball season, what happens during fall season and during the rainy season with the wash. And so they would be best equipped to tell us what this space would need when it's built out. I think some of the challenges with any community engagement project is that depending on the community that you're working with, there might be some other issues that residents want to raise, and completely, you know, validly, because some of these, like many planning issues, a lot of these things intersect, right? So if you're talking about parks and open space, you might also be talking about unhoused folks. If you're talking about water infrastructure projects, you might also be talking about some areas in the community that haven't been taken care of for a very long time. If you're talking about new streets, you might be talking about sidewalks and accessibility. And so sometimes one of the challenges is letting folks know that the topic we're talking about at that particular meeting is for a specific goal and a specific vision. But I do think it's really important to listen to community members and their experience as well, because while it might not be 100% applicable to that very thing that you're talking about, I do think it's insightful to their experience, their user and resident experience in that area.
At this edge of the park, right, what was going on was the county had a certain idea of how they thought it could look. And part of it involved removing a lot of the trees. So when the families spoke up, in one of the engagement circles or activities, event, they made sure that they said that. And so then the county went back to the drawing board, right? They took they took that information, just that piece of information as an example, because there was others, and redesigned the project kind of look, and the how it was going to be built, where things were going to be. Another thing that came up in that discussion was safety. Several vehicles have already come up onto the park, right? When they've crashed, come up, and unfortunately, folks have been injured, and I believe there was even like one death. So the families brought that up as well. So in this corner now, part of the design considerations is going to be putting some safety features along this very busy street to reduce the possibilities of vehicles being able to shoot up and come up onto here, which includes actually removing, not taking them away, but just moving them to another location, the exercise equipment in this corner. The exercise equipment in that corner is going to now be kind of spread out throughout the park to also activate the park, which was something that came up with the families around, how can we activate and get more people to kind of walk around the park?
So I think one of the things that community feedback has really provided in the projects that we've done has been to create multi-purpose projects that not only benefit the climate and the environment, but also the people that will be using the space. We recognize that we're in a time with climate change that I feel like there's nothing that can be a single-use project anymore. So a park can no longer just be a park, right? I think with a lot of things that California is doing is trying to incorporate ways to capture stormwater and to mitigate heat in urban areas. And so through our community engagement, we have found ways to not only bring these huge green infrastructure projects into our community, but also to include the user experience. So include the residents' perspective so that above the park and above the stormwater project, you also have space for community to gather, for community to find a place of respite during hot summer months, or whenever they want to hang out with their kids outside.
We got a multiple kind of points of voices into like what they would like to see, including the sports section, right? The basketball, the tennis courts. Some folks say, hey, let's remove the tennis courts, but there's actually a tennis program here, and that's like, let's make sure we keep that intact. But also the baseball fields, right? Like the baseball fields, they've been always, there's a problem with flooding when the rain comes down. So there's going to be some elements that are going to help reduce that flooding. All of that came through this process of an example of what we call deep, committed, culturally competent engagement. And that is dedicated. And by dedicated, we mean there was resources. The county actually subcontracted our organization to support us to make sure we had staff time to help get the word out, including giving a certain amount to the actual resident leaders that were doing a lot of the outreach.